The day Earth's battleship arrived in the Zenari system, the entire galaxy held its breath. The Galactic Union had always dismissed humanity as a minor species, a backwater race from the Sol system that barely had a seat at the interstellar table. To them, humans were insignificant, useful as mercenaries, laborers, or traders, but not a real power. Certainly not a threat. That changed when the Behemoth arrived. The battleship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not sleek like the elegant warships of the Elver, nor did it have the organic, flowing architecture of the Zith. No, the Behemoth was brutal in design. Sharp edges, thick plating, and weapon mounts bristling across its hull. It radiated power, not grace. And it wasn't alone. Flanking it were two smaller vessels, the Revenant and the Titan Fist, each one more menacing than any warship the Union had ever encountered. They came in response to the massacre at Proxima Centauri. The Drath Collective, an insectoid race that ruled half the known galaxy, had made a fatal mistake. They had destroyed a human colony, assuming Earth would bow down like so many other races before them. The Drath thought humanity would beg for mercy. Instead, they got the Behemoth. The Galactic Union's diplomats scrambled for answers. They sent frantic messages to their allies, urging them to prepare for what was coming. The Drath, however, laughed. To them, humans were nothing but pests, a minor inconvenience. They gathered their fleets, ready to swat away whatever Earth dared to throw at them. And then the Behemoth opened fire. The first shot shattered the lead Drath battleship in an instant. Their shields, which had withstood centuries of war against lesser races, crumpled like paper under the sheer force of human weaponry. The Union watched in horror as humanity demonstrated something no one had believed possible: true technological supremacy. Plasma cannons burned through hulls. Kinetic rounds the size of city buses punched through enemy formations like they were made of glass. Rail guns, moving projectiles at nearly the speed of light, shredded entire fleets before they could even react. The Drath screamed for reinforcements. They sent hundreds of warships to stop the human onslaught. It didn't matter. Earth had been underestimated for centuries. They had watched the galaxy, studied its technology, and learned its weaknesses. And when the time came, they didn't just catch up. They surpassed every major power in one brutal, terrifying moment. The Galactic Union panicked. If humanity could do this to the Drath, what could they do to the rest of them? Then came the final transmission from the Behemoth, a simple message broadcast to every world in the Union. Earth does not forget. Earth does not forgive. Stay out of our way. And just like that, the galaxy cowered in horror. The wreckage of the Drath fleet still drifted through the void, glowing embers of shattered warships casting eerie shadows against the backdrop of the stars. The battle had lasted less than an hour, but its impact would be felt for centuries. The Galactic Union's High Council, a collection of the most powerful species in the known universe, sat in stunned silence. The footage of the Behemoth's assault played on a massive holographic screen in the center of the Grand Chamber. Not one of them had expected this. Ambassador Jir of the Elver, a tall, silver-skinned diplomat whose race had dominated the galaxy's politics for millennia, was the first to speak. "We have miscalculated," he admitted, his usual calm replaced by unease. "Humanity was not what we believed." The insectoid Kathari delegate clicked its mandibles nervously. They destroyed an entire battle group. The Drath had nearly 100 warships. And the humans? 3. Interrupted Grand Marshal Sorak of the Thales, his feline features tense. They only needed 3. A hush fell over the council. Humanity had never been taken seriously as a military force. Their fleets were assumed to be outdated, weak, barely capable of holding their own. And yet, here they were, standing atop the ruins of one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. But it wasn't just their victory that terrified the Council. It was the way they fought. Other species had long since abandoned kinetic weaponry in favor of energy-based combat. The humans, however, had perfected both. Their ships fired slugs of hyperdense metal at relativistic speeds, tearing through shields that should have been impenetrable. They didn't just disable enemy ships. They annihilated them, reducing them to drifting debris in seconds. They did not come for negotiations. The the Zith representative murmured, its gelatinous form quivering. They did not ask for reparations. They did not even issue a formal declaration of war. No, Jir agreed grimly. They came for vengeance. At that moment, a new transmission arrived. The Union's high command expected a demand, perhaps a threat. What they received was a cold, precise statement. We will not seek war with the Union. We will not expand beyond our borders. But if any of you so much as touch another human world, we will do to your fleets what we did to the Drath. A moment of heavy silence followed. Then the feed cut out. The message was clear. The humans weren't claiming territory. They weren't demanding tribute. They weren't seeking allies. They had come to prove a point. And they had done it so thoroughly that every government in the galaxy now whispered one terrifying thought. What if the humans decide they want more? The Drath Collective was finished. Their home world, once a fortress planet teeming with their kind, now sat in eerie silence. Not because humanity had destroyed it, no, the Behemoth had left Drath Prime untouched, but the message had been received loud and clear. The Drath survivors had surrendered before humanity ever reached their system. Their ruling council had scattered, fleeing to the farthest corners of the galaxy. Their military, once a symbol of conquest and terror, had been reduced to wreckage floating in the void. The few warships they had left refused to engage. Some even defected, offering themselves to other empires just to avoid the wrath of Earth's forces. But the galaxy's fear didn't stem from the destruction of the Drath alone. It was how the humans had done it. Every species had heard the stories. Wars lasting decades, fleets clashing in prolonged battles, entire campaigns waged over small stretches of space. But humans had ended an empire in a matter of hours. They hadn't fought a war. They had executed a sentence. And now, the question every ruler, every strategist, every admiral was asking was simple. What else were the humans hiding? The Galactic Union scrambled to understand the extent of Earth's military capabilities. They scoured their intelligence reports, sent spies, bribed traitors, even begged human diplomats for insight. But no answer came, and that was what terrified them the most, because the humans hadn't even mobilized their full fleet. The Behemoth and its escorts were just a fraction of Earth's power. The real fleet, no one knew where it was, how many ships it contained, or what weapons it carried. For the first time in history, the galaxy wasn't afraid of an empire trying to conquer it. They were afraid of an empire that had no interest in conquest. An empire that only acted when provoked, but when it did, left nothing behind. The Alvari Confederation, once one of humanity's biggest critics, quietly withdrew their patrols from human borders. The Carry, who had once enslaved human prisoners of war, suddenly abolished all forced labor programs. And the Zith, who prided themselves on their neutrality, refused to speak on the matter at all. Even the Galactic Union's ruling body, usually so quick to pass sanctions and dictate the course of interstellar politics, did nothing. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. If humanity ever decided to truly go to war, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The silence following humanity's display of power stretched across the stars. No species dared to provoke them, and for the first time in galactic history, a single force had become untouchable. Even the most war-hardened empires, those who had once laughed at the idea of human supremacy, now whispered in hushed voices about the Behemoth. But while the galaxy cowered, humanity was not idle. Deep within the Sol system, Earth's true military command convened in a classified orbital station hidden behind Jupiter's shadow. Unlike the panic-ridden councils of the Galactic Union, the men and women seated around the war table were eerily calm. They had expected this outcome. Admiral Jonathan Hayes, the architect of humanity's modern war doctrine, leaned forward. His voice, though level, carried the weight of what had just transpired. "The Union is afraid," he said simply, his steel-gray eyes scanning the room. That was the point. Around him sat the minds responsible for Earth's dominance. Generals, strategists, scientists. Not a single one of them was celebrating. There were no toasts, no boasts of victory. Humanity had won a battle, but their true war had only just begun. A woman with sharp features and a data slate in her hand cleared her throat. The Drath are shattered. Their economy will collapse in a matter of months. Reports indicate that smaller factions are already carving up their remains. Hayes nodded. That was expected. The moment the Drath showed weakness, the vultures of the galaxy would descend upon them. It was how power worked out here. Another officer, a younger man with dark skin and a cybernetic eye, spoke next. The Union hasn't made a move against us, but we've intercepted transmissions between the Elver and the Zith. They're running simulations, testing out hypothetical conflicts with Earth. A smirk crossed Hayes's face, and the officer hesitated, then exhaled. None of their models show them winning. A chuckle rippled through the room, but it wasn't one of amusement. It was the kind of laugh shared between soldiers who knew a terrible truth. Hayes leaned back, interlacing his fingers. Then we proceed as planned. The woman across from him narrowed her eyes. You think they'll still test us? They always do, he said. Fear doesn't last forever. Eventually, someone will get brave. They'll think we got lucky against the Drath, that we don't have the numbers to fight a prolonged war, that they can unite against us. He paused, his smirk fading. His voice was cold, certain. And when they do, we remind them why the galaxy should be afraid. The room fell silent. There was no bloodlust in their expressions, no cruelty in their words, but there was certainty. The galaxy had made the mistake of underestimating humanity once. They wouldn't get a second chance. The days following the destruction of the Drath fleet sent ripples through the galactic community. Every major empire, every ruling council, and every warlord in the known systems was left with the same thought. What have we done? For centuries, humanity had been treated as little more than an afterthought. A species confined to its small sector of space, scrapping for resources, barely keeping up with the great powers of the universe. They had been useful, sure, hired as mercenaries, traders, explorers, but no one had ever truly feared them. Not until now. And yet, fear alone was not enough to keep the galaxy at bay forever. Admiral Jonathan Hayes knew this better than anyone. Sitting in the command center of Earth's secretive Black Station, he watched as dozens of intelligence reports scrolled past his screen. The Galactic Union was rattled, but rattled did not mean defeated. It meant they were thinking. It meant they were planning. And eventually it meant they would act. The war against the Drath had not been a war. It had been an execution. But the next war, the one that Hayes knew was inevitable, that one would be different. Sir, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Commander Elise Carter stood at attention, her expression grim. We've detected an increase in fleet movements along our borders. Hayes exhaled slowly. Which factions? The Alvari Confederation and the Zith Dominion are reinforcing their defensive lines. We've also intercepted a Union-wide transmission. Carter tapped on her holographic pad, and the message appeared before them. A grainy recording of High Chancellor Orland, one of the most powerful political figures in the galaxy, flickered to life. The reptilian leader's voice was measured but heavy with tension. The events at Proxima Centauri have shown us a terrifying truth. Humanity possesses weapons beyond anything we have prepared for. Their fleet, once dismissed as primitive, is capable of annihilation on an unprecedented scale. We must not allow ourselves to be divided by fear. We must stand together. We must find a way to ensure that such a force is never again unleashed upon the galaxy. Hayes snorted. They're uniting against us. Carter nodded. It's only a matter of time before they attempt something. They're scared. Hayes said, but fear breeds desperation. They won't sit idle forever. They'll try to learn our secrets, infiltrate our systems, maybe even launch a preemptive strike. We're monitoring all possible incursions, Carter assured him. No ships have crossed into our space yet. Hayes stood, walking over to the massive viewport overlooking Jupiter's stormy expanse. Black Station wasn't visible to the naked eye. It was hidden deep within the planet's radiation belt, undetectable to any known sensor technology. It was the beating heart of humanity's war machine, the place where their most dangerous projects were developed in secrecy. What about our own movements? He asked. Carter hesitated. Fleet Command is holding the Behemoth back at Titan Station, awaiting further orders. But she glanced at him. Sir, with respect, the Union won't stay defensive forever. They're building alliances as we speak. If they come for us, they'll do it together. Hayes turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Then we'll need to make sure they never come for us. Carter frowned. Are you suggesting a first strike? No, Hayes said. Not yet. But we need to show them that fear is the correct response. That there is no winning against us. He paused, his gaze intense. We don't start wars, Carter. We end them before they begin. Carter didn't respond immediately, but the weight of his words hung between them. The galaxy was on edge, waiting to see if humanity would make another move. And that was exactly where Hayes wanted them. Begin deployment of Ghost Fleet Protocol, he ordered. Let's remind the galaxy that no matter where they hide, no matter how many alliances they forge. He turned back to the viewport, watching Jupiter's storms rage below. Humanity is always watching. The first step of Earth's true war had begun. The stars belonged to humanity now. Not in the way the Galactic Union had once claimed dominion over the galaxy, ruling through treaties and trade agreements. No, humanity's rule was far more terrifying. It was silent, unchallenged, a presence that loomed over every empire, unseen yet undeniable. And Admiral Jonathan Hayes intended to keep it that way. Deep within Black Station, hidden beyond Jupiter's radiation storms, the command center hummed with quiet activity. Officers worked in focused silence, processing intelligence reports, monitoring fleet movements, and ensuring that humanity's watchful eye never blinked. Commander Elise Carter approached Hayes with a grim expression. Sir, the Union has begun mobilizing. Surveillance drones have picked up large-scale fleet exercises near Elver space. Hayes barely reacted. How many ships? At least 300, she replied. Mostly Elver, but there are Zith warships among them. They're training together, simulating large-scale engagements. She hesitated before adding, their simulations focus on countering the Behemoth. Hayes exhaled slowly. Predictable. It had been inevitable. Fear was a powerful motivator, but it only lasted so long. Eventually, paranoia set in. The Union knew they couldn't allow humanity to exist as an unchecked power. They would try to find weaknesses, develop countermeasures, and when they believed they were ready, they would strike. They would do exactly what Hayes had predicted. Any indication they're planning to move on us soon? He asked. Carter shook her head. Not yet. Right now, they're just preparing. But the fact that the Alvari and Zith are working together, that's unprecedented. It means they're serious. Hayes stared at the galactic map hovering in front of them, red markers highlighting known fleet movements. He could already see the pieces shifting into place. The Union wanted a war. They just didn't realize they had already lost. He turned to Carter. Activate Ghost Fleet Protocol. I want silent incursions into their systems. No attacks, no engagements, just surveillance. We're going to know everything before they make their move. She nodded. I'll have the stealth ships deployed immediately. Hayes clasped his hands behind his back. And bring the Behemoth to the Kepler defense line. No direct confrontations, but I want them to see it. Let them know it's waiting for them. Carter smirked. You want them to hesitate. I want them to understand, Hayes corrected. Before they even think about war, they need to feel the weight of what they're considering. He leaned in, his voice quiet but firm. Because when we strike, it won't be a war. His eyes, cold as the void, met hers. It'll be an extinction. Across the galaxy, in the heart of the Alari Confederation, High Chancellor Orland sat in his private chamber, watching the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. The footage showed a lone battleship, a human warship, floating along the border of Union space. The Behemoth, it hadn't moved. It hadn't fired a shot. But it was there, like a predator watching its prey. Orland turned to his military advisors. Tell me, he said carefully, do we have any weapon capable of matching that ship? Silence. The gathered officers exchanged nervous glances, none wanting to be the first to speak. Finally, Admiral Vreth cleared his throat. No, he admitted. We don't. Orland felt a chill run down his spine. He had hoped for a different answer, hoped in vain, because no matter how much they trained, no matter how many ships they built, the truth remained. Humanity was already at war with them. The Union just hadn't realized it yet. The moment the Behemoth appeared along the Kepler defense line, the Galactic Union froze. Messages flooded through encrypted channels. High-ranking officials whispered in darkened chambers. Military analysts scrambled to determine what it meant. The battleship had not crossed into Union space. It had not fired a shot. It simply existed. And yet, that alone was enough to bring the galaxy to the brink of panic. In the Alvari High Council, Chancellor Orland stood before a holographic display. His eyes locked on the massive warship floating in the void. Even from millions of kilometers away, its presence was suffocating. An aide leaned in, voice hushed with barely concealed terror. "Sir, our forces remain on high alert. We've positioned 3 fleets along the sector border." But he hesitated. "But what?" Orland snapped. The aide swallowed hard. "We have no idea what's inside that ship. We don't even know the extent of human technology." That was the problem, wasn't it? Humanity had revealed only what they wanted the galaxy to see. They had unleashed the Behemoth against the Drath, yes. But what if that was just a distraction? What if their true weapons, their true warships, were hidden somewhere beyond the reaches of known space, waiting for the right moment to strike? Orland turned to his military advisors. "Tell me we have something, some countermeasure." A Zith strategist clicked his mandibles. "We've been running combat simulations against the Behemoth. Every scenario ends in catastrophic loss." The room fell into silence. Orland clenched his fists. He had been prepared for war, but not this kind of war. Not one where his people were already outmatched before the first shot was even fired. "We cannot allow ourselves to be paralyzed by fear," he said finally. "The humans have power, yes, but they do not rule us. If they think they can intimidate the Union into submission, they are mistaken." One of the Alvari generals stepped forward. "Do you propose an attack, Chancellor?" Orland hesitated. That was the question, wasn't it? Strike first, or wait for the inevitable? Either choice carried its own kind of death sentence. "No," he said at last. "Not yet, but we will prepare." Across the galaxy, preparations for war began. Meanwhile, aboard the Behemoth, they're coming. Commander Elise Carter placed a data pad on the command table, showing the latest movement of Union forces. A fleet of nearly 200 warships had begun mobilizing towards the Kepler defense line. Admiral Hayes studied the data in silence. "They won't attack," he said finally. "Not yet. This is a test." Carter nodded. "They want to see if we'll back down." A slow smirk crossed Hayes's face. "Then let's teach them what happens when you test humanity." He turned to his officers. "Deploy Project Revenant. Let them see what they should be afraid of." Carter's eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure? We haven't revealed it yet." Hayes's voice was calm, certain. "It's time the Union learned that the Behemoth isn't the worst thing humanity has built." Hours later, at the Kepler defense line, the Union fleet arrived in formation. Weapons powered but not armed. An unmistakable show of force. And then they saw it. A new ship, larger than anything the galaxy had ever known. A monstrous, abyssal black warship, its hull absorbing light like a void in space. It made the Behemoth look small. No records existed of its creation. No intelligence reports had ever mentioned its existence. It had never been seen before. The Union fleet, despite its numbers, hesitated. And then the ship spoke. "You were standing at the edge of your own destruction." The message rang across all channels, cold and emotionless. The Union fleet, once so confident in their show of force, found themselves staring into the unknown. And for the first time, they understood the truth. Humanity had never needed to fight them, because humanity had already won. The void of space had never felt so suffocating. The Union fleet, once assembled as a proud show of strength, now drifted in eerie silence before the monstrous warship that had appeared before them. No records, no intelligence reports, No prior warnings. This was something new, something the humans had chosen to reveal at this very moment. The ship had no name displayed on its hull, no insignia, no visible energy output, and yet, its presence alone was crushing. You were standing at the edge of your own destruction. The voice was synthetic, almost lifeless, yet it carried a weight that pressed into the minds of every Union officer. The message had been received loud and clear. Aboard the Union command ship Eternal Vigilance, Admiral Vreth of the Alvari Confederation swallowed hard. His fingers hovered over the comm panel, but he hesitated. He had been a soldier for decades, had fought wars against ruthless enemies. Yet in this moment, he felt like an insect staring into the jaws of a predator. "Orders, Admiral?" one of his officers asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vreth's mind raced. What was this thing before them? Another superweapon? A planet killer? The Behemoth had already been terrifying, but this was something else entirely, and humanity had never mentioned it. They had kept this hidden. Until now. Vreth cleared his throat, forcing himself to regain composure. "Open a channel." A brief chime confirmed the link. "This is Admiral Vreth of the Galactic Union. Identify yourself." Silence. Then the ship's voice returned, its synthetic tone cold and unfeeling. "Your name is irrelevant. Your rank is meaningless. Your fleet is insufficient." Vreth's blood ran cold. This wasn't negotiation. This wasn't diplomacy. This was a warning. And it wasn't just directed at him. It was meant for everyone in the Union. Vreth's instincts screamed at him to retreat, to take his fleet and run. But he knew the consequences. If he backed down now, the Union would lose all credibility. Humanity had already demonstrated power beyond comprehension. But the moment the Union admitted defeat, they would become nothing more than vassals under Earth's shadow. He had no choice. "Hold position," Vreth ordered. "We are not here for war." Another moment of silence passed. Then the ship's voice returned. "Then you should leave." The command was not shouted. It was not accompanied by the charging of weapons or the movement of attack formations. It was simply stated as a fact, one that carried the weight of an unspoken threat. Vreth clenched his fists. He wanted to respond with defiance, to demand answers, to prove that the Union would not be cowed. But his sensors told a different story. There were no life signs aboard the warship, no heat signatures, no biological readings. This ship was not manned, which meant it was something else entirely, and the implications of that realization shook him to his core. Vreth's officers awaited his orders, tension thick in the air. He could push forward, demand negotiations, perhaps even order a test strike to gauge the ship's defenses. But deep down, he already knew how that would end. He took a slow breath. "We fall back." A ripple of disbelief spread through the command deck. But no one voiced their objections. No one wanted to stay here. The fleet adjusted course. One by one, the ships turned away from the Kepler defense line, retreating without another word. Aboard the nameless human warship, Admiral Jonathan Hayes watched the Union forces disappear from the sensor display. He allowed himself a small, satisfied smirk. "Phase 1 is complete," Commander Elise Carter said. "They took the bait. They were never going to fight," Hayes said, folding his arms. "But now they know. Now they understand that the Behemoth wasn't our greatest weapon." Carter nodded. "What do we do next?" Hayes turned his gaze back to the viewport, where the stars stretched infinitely before him. "Now," he murmured, "now we let them realize that they've already lost." Inside the Union's War Council on Xerxes Prime, the atmosphere was suffocating. High Chancellor Orland sat at the head of the chamber, his expression unreadable as the footage from Vreth's fleet played on the central display. The warship had never fired, and yet the Union had retreated. "They didn't even fight us," one of the council members whispered. "They didn't need to," Orland exhaled sharply. "They're showing us the tip of the blade, making sure we see it before they decide to use it." The Union was at a crossroads. They could attempt diplomacy, but what bargaining power did they have? They could attempt to rally their forces, But how did one prepare for war against an enemy that had already won before the first battle? Orland clenched his jaw. He would not surrender. He would not allow humanity to dominate the galaxy unchecked. But every instinct in his body told him the same thing. The Union's fate was no longer in their hands. It was in theirs. The Galactic Union had existed for over 1,000 years. It had withstood wars, economic collapses, rebellions, and external threats. It had bent, but never broken. Until now, humanity had done something no empire, no warlord, no species had ever accomplished. They had shattered the Union's will without ever firing a second shot. Across the galaxy, fear took root in every major power. The Alvari, once proud and unshakable, began withdrawing their fleets from contested regions, unwilling to risk provoking humanity further. The Zith Dominion, known for its ruthless expansion, suddenly halted its military campaigns, its warlords unsure whether humanity was watching them from the shadows. Trade routes collapsed. Diplomats scrambled to salvage alliances that were already crumbling. Whispers of surrender spread through high councils. And in the darkest corners of space, some even suggested the unthinkable, that the Union should submit to Earth before it was too late. And then the final message arrived. It was not sent through official diplomatic channels. It was not delivered by an ambassador or through a subspace relay. It simply appeared on every planetary communication system, every military console, every leader's private terminal. The war was over before it began. You just didn't know it yet. Earth does not seek conquest. We do not need war. But if you ever lift a hand against us again, there will be nothing left of you. The Union's leaders, already crumbling under the weight of their own fear, knew what had to be done. One by one, the great empires of the galaxy quietly rescinded their war plans. Defensive fleets were recalled. Skirmishes along human borders ceased. And the once proud Galactic Union, an alliance that had ruled for a millennium, was reduced to nothing more than fractured, obedient states. No treaty was ever signed. No formal surrender was ever issued. But the message was clear. Humanity did not rule the galaxy through force. They ruled through certainty. The certainty that if the Union ever dared to challenge them again, it would be the last mistake they ever made. As he watched the last of the Union's fleets withdraw from contested space, Admiral Jonathan Hayes allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. The war had never been about territory. It had never been about conquest. It had been about setting a precedent. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. That era was over. He turned to Commander Elise Carter. "It's done." Carter nodded, exhaling. "What happens now?" Hayes smiled faintly. "Now we watch, and we wait, because there will always be someone who forgot the lesson humanity taught the galaxy today." His eyes hardened. "And when they do, Earth will be there to remind them.